So I want you to imagine walking through a quiet, completely empty museum.
Oh, that early pandemic vibe.
Exactly. It is the summer of 2020, right in the middle of the global COVID lockdowns. The halls are totally silent. The exhibits are dark. And archaeologist Walter Christ is doing this solitary walkthrough at Het Romings Museum
Right, which is in Heerlen in the
in
Netherlands.
Ireland. And he's taking a moment to look at the cataloged remnants of this ancient Roman settlement. He's walking along, and then he passes a display case. Inside is this seemingly ordinary cataloged chunk of rock.
Just a rock.
Just a rock. But something about the crude etchings on its surface, uh, it just stops him in his tracks.
And that single moment of observation really set off an extraordinary chain of events.
Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Our mission today is to explore this remarkable high-tech detective story. We are diving into how a team of researchers combined microscopic forensic analysis with advanced artificial intelligence.
All to reverse engineer a lost game, right?
Exactly. The lost rules of a 2,000-year-old Roman board game. It is wild. We are basically looking at the ultimate archaeological cold case. You have an ancient artifact, absolutely zero written instructions, and an AI algorithm that is tasked with performing, like forensic game theory.
It sounds like sci-fi, but it is real archaeology.
By the end of this deep dive, you will understand the mechanics of a game that has not been played since the days of the Roman Empire. But to truly grasp the weight of this discovery, we have to establish the setting first.
Let's do it.
Let's travel back to the ancient settlement of Coriovalli. Today we know it as Heerlen, sitting near the modern German border.
And Cornvallum was not just some quiet village. It was a vital, thriving outpost. It was founded during the reign of Augustus, and it operated right at the nexus of two principal Roman roadways.
Location, location, location.
Exactly. That geographic positioning basically guaranteed a sustained level of economic prosperity and cultural exchange for centuries. We see the evidence of this wealth in the architectural remnants, the ornate burial plots, and all the imported goods excavated from the region over the decades.
And it is from the remnants of that bustling frontier town that we get the artifact at the center of our investigation today. In the museum's archives, it is cataloged simply as Object 04433.
Catchy name.
Very catchy. If you were to examine it closely, you would find an oval slab of white stone. It measures roughly 8.3 by 5.7 inches. It has a bit of heft to it, but it's small enough to rest comfortably on a tavern table.
And the geological composition of the stone provides our first major clue here. It is Jurassic Norroy limestone.
Which is not local to the Netherlands.
Not at all. The Romans went to great lengths to import this specific material from ancient quarries in northeastern France. It was highly prized for grand columns and monumental architecture because it served as this soft, easily sculpted substitute for marble. It kept a pristine, smooth white finish.
But Object 04433 is far too small to be a structural component of a monument. It's a scrap piece.
Yeah, it falls into the category of what archaeologists call spolia.
Repurposed rubble.
Exactly. Someone in Coriovalli took a discarded fragment of this expensive imported limestone and decided to adapt it for a completely different use.
Which brings us to the etchings. Carved into the flat top of this repurposed stone is a deliberate geometric grid. It is laid out as an oblong octagon nestled inside a rectangle, and it creates approximately 20 intersecting playable spots.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the classification of that grid has been heavily debated in archaeological circles for decades.
Oh, absolutely. The primary issue is a lack of clear stratigraphy. The historical records surrounding the stone's initial discovery are actually pretty contradictory.
Yeah, they are a mess.
Certain sources suggest it was unearthed during a documented 1984 excavation of Coriovalli. But then other records imply it was found much earlier, maybe in the late 19th or early 20th century.
And without that rigorous, modern scientific context from a proper dig, interpreting isolated objects becomes incredibly difficult. For years, the prevailing theory suggested it might simply be a mason's practice piece.
Like a scrap of stone to test the sharpness of a chisel.
Right. Or, alternatively, it was dismissed as an architectural doodle, just an idle carving with no functional purpose.
But if we look at the culture of the era, the Romans were prolific gamers. Some archaeologists suspected it was a game board from the very beginning. However, when Walter Christ, who specializes in ancient games at Leiden University, analyzed the grid geometry, He noted a glaring inconsistency.
It didn't match anything.
Right, it did not align with any of the established Roman pastimes.
The standard Roman gaming repertoire is really well documented. You have Ludus Latrunculorum, which is a tactical military strategy game. You have Ludus Duodecim Scriptorum, which heavily utilized dice and linear movement. And there was Rhoda, a simpler circular alignment game.
But Object 04433's octagon inside a rectangle design deviates sharply from all of those established patterns. If it was a game, it belonged to a tradition we had no record of.
None at all.
So the investigative hurdle becomes twofold. First, how do you definitively prove a rock is a game board rather than a doodle? And second, how do you recover the mechanics of a game when the civilization that played it has been gone for 2 millennia?
What's fascinating here is that the initial proof was entirely structural. The answer wasn't hidden in some forgotten Roman manuscript. It was actually embedded in the microscopic topography of the limestone itself.
Right. So to move past the debate over masons' doodles and practice chiseling, the research team required a truly forensic view of the stone's physical history.
So they collaborated with Restra?
Yes, a local firm specializing in the conservation and advanced analysis of archaeological objects. Restra subjected the stone to extremely high-resolution 3D topographical scanning.
And those 3D scans mapped the surface variations down to the micron level. When you view the digital model, the architectural doodle theory is immediately dismantled.
It's just gone.
Completely. The imaging revealed that certain etched lines on the grid, particularly the diagonal intersections, were worn down a fraction of a millimeter deeper than the rest of the board.
And a fraction of a millimeter is so easy to miss with the naked eye. But under a topographical scan, that microabrasion is the definitive signature of repeated human behavior.
Exactly. The scans highlighted what geologists refer to as homogeneous zones. Natural limestone has a granularly, slightly pitted microtexture. However, over years of continuous play, sliding hard counters made of glass, polished bone, or fired earthenware across the board acts as a fine-grit sandpaper.
It aggressively levels out the natural roughness of the stone.
Yes, creating these polished microscopic tracks.
The critical data point from those scans is the distribution of the wear. It is not uniform, and it is not random weathering. The homogeneous zones are highly concentrated along specific geometric paths. People were not just tracing the lines arbitrarily.
They were confined to moving objects over exact, predictable routes over and over again.
That concentrated wear pattern proves absolute intentionality. It confirms that the movements were constrained by a strict set of rules. You only generate that specific localized abrasion if players are mandated to travel along those exact vectors.
So the 3D imaging effectively closed the first part of the investigation. Object 04433 is undeniably a heavily utilized game board.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because confirming the object's function is merely the foundation. Deducing the rules from those microscopic tracks requires an entirely different methodology.
It's a huge leap.
It really is. To bridge the gap between a physical wear pattern and a playable rule set, the researchers had to basically translate human intuition into mathematics.
Which is why they partnered with computer scientists at Maastricht University. They needed to utilize a highly specialized artificial intelligence system known as Ludii AI.
Ludii, like Ludus.
Right.
Yeah.
And Ludii is not a standard generative text model. It is a comprehensive game-playing AI and a massive computational database developed as part of the Digital Looting project. That project catalogs traditional games and their mechanics from all across human history.
The leap from physical artifact to digital simulation requires a massive dataset. The team programmed the Ludii AI agents to operate on a perfect digital recreation of the Hirland board's grid.
They built the digital arena.
Yes. Next, they isolated a data set of rule sets from over 100 traditional European games. They specifically filtered for games designed for compact spaces, games structured around a 20-point grid, mirroring the parameters of our limestone artifact.
And the researchers categorized this massive library of historical games into distinct mechanical families. For instance, the dataset included alignment games, where the mathematical objective is to position pieces in an uninterrupted sequence.
Like tic-tac-toe.
Exactly. It also included blocking games, where the win condition requires maneuvering pieces to physically trap the opponent, eliminating their ability to make a legal move.
With the digital board established and the library of ancient rule sets loaded, the simulation phase began. The team instructed the AI to play 1,000 complete matches for every single rule variation against itself.
And the AI wasn't just executing random moves to see what happened, it was programmed to play strategically.
The AI utilized an optimization technique known as alpha-beta pruning. In game theory, a computer simulates moves by branching out into a massive decision tree, calculating every possible future outcome.
Alpha-beta pruning allows the AI to evaluate these branches, anticipate an opponent's optimal counter strategy, and aggressively cut off branches that represent mathematically poor decisions.
It literally prunes the tree.
It prunes the tree. By employing alpha-beta pruning, the AI wasn't just generating data, it was effectively simulating highly competent human play. It played to win, mimicking the tactical decision-making of two seasoned players sitting in a Roman tavern.
The objective of this massive computational tournament was to generate a digital heat map of piece movements for each rule set.
And then the researchers cross-referenced the AI's digital heat maps against the physical homogeneous zones identified in the 3D scans of the limestone.
Such a smart approach.
It really was. It was a process of reverse engineering through elimination. If a simulated alignment game heavily favored piece movement along the outer rectangular boundary, but the physical stone showed deep microscopic wear across the inner diagonals.
The AI discarded that rule set.
Exactly. The digital footprint had to perfectly overlay the 2,000-year-old physical footprint.
After churning through millions of simulated tactical decisions, the dataset converged. The AI definitively ruled out race games and alignment games. The mathematical model determined that the microabrasions could only have been produced by a blocking game.
And more specifically, the AI narrowed the possibilities down to 9 variations of a very specific subgenre of blocking game. 9 variations that replicated the precise wear patterns on the Heirloom stone.
This exhaustive process culminated in the reconstruction of the game itself, which the academic community has officially designated as Ludus Coriovalli, or the game of Coriovalli.
Thanks to that fusion of microscopic scanning and AI simulation, we can actually outline the mechanics. Ludus Coriovalli operates as an asymmetric battle of attrition. It belongs to a mechanical family historically categorized as dogs and hares games.
Now, the term asymmetric indicates that the opposing players do not begin the match with an equal number of pieces.
Nor do they share the same win conditions.
Right. In this specific simulation, one player commands a force of 4 pieces, designated as the dogs. The opposing player controls a smaller force of just 2 pieces, the hares.
The starting configuration places the 4 dogs on the 4 leftmost points of the oblong grid. The 2 hares are positioned on the inner 2 points on the rightmost side.
And the turn structure is pretty straightforward. Players alternate moving a single piece to an adjacent, unoccupied point along the etched lines of the board.
The tactical depth really emerges from the conflicting objectives. The player commanding the dogs is aggressively hunting. Their goal is to systematically surround and physically block the hares, restricting their movement until no legal moves remain.
Conversely, the player controlling the hares is playing a game of pure evasion. They must navigate the grid, dodging the dogs, and utilizing the diagonal intersections to maintain their mobility.
The player operating the hares wins by surviving the attrition and remaining unblocked.
It creates a brilliant dynamic of claustrophobia versus agility. You can just visualize the tension as those smooth glass or bone counters were pushed across the soft limestone. However, to maintain rigorous scientific objectivity regarding the AI's output.
This raises an important question, articulated clearly by Dennis Summers, one of the computer scientists from the Maastricht University team. There is an inherent caveat when utilizing generative algorithms.
A pretty big caveat.
Yes. If you provide a powerful AI system like Ludii AI with a geometric grid and a set of operational constraints, it is mathematically obligated to find a solution. It will invariably output a playable rule set.
That is a crucial distinction. The dogs and hares blocking mechanic represents the absolute most statistically probable scenario based on the physical wear mapped against the digital simulation. But without a preserved written rulebook from Coriovalli, we must acknowledge a fractional margin of mystery.
We cannot assert with 100% absolute certainty that the Romans played it with these exact 9 variations.
The statistical probability, however, remains overwhelming. The correlation between the AI's strategic heat map and the physical microabrasions on the Jurassic limestone is simply too precise to discard as coincidence.
Oh, definitely. The physical evidence strongly supports the AI's conclusion.
So what does this all mean? Beyond the sheer technical achievement of recovering a lost game, why does the classification of Ludus Coriovalli matter to the broader historical record?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it fundamentally revises the timeline of European gaming history. Prior to this AI-driven reconstruction, historians operated under the consensus that asymmetric blocking games did not emerge in Europe until the Middle Ages.
The conventional timeline placed the introduction of these mechanics much later, associating them with Viking games such as Hertovel or the medieval European staple Fox and Geese.
And the validation of Ludus Coriovalli dramatically disrupts that timeline. It pushes the documented history of European blocking games back by an astonishing 1500 to 1700 years.
That is a massive jump.
It really is. It demonstrates that this sophisticated genre of asymmetric gaming was already thriving on the frontiers of the Roman Empire.
It reveals a rich, undocumented folk tradition. We have extensive historical literature detailing the elite, highly visible games played by the patrician class in Rome. But Object 04433 proves that alongside those famous pastimes, there was a parallel tradition of localized hunt games.
Games being played by the average citizens, merchants, and soldiers stationed in provincial towns.
These were the games the historians of the era simply neglected to write down.
Furthermore, this research establishes a groundbreaking methodological precedent for archaeology. The team did not just utilize algorithms to translate dead languages or map geographical coordinates.
They deployed artificial intelligence to actively simulate human behavior.
They took a silent, inert piece of repurposed limestone and extracted a dynamic, playable rule set.
That methodology provides a new lens for evaluating thousands of isolated, unclassified objects sitting in museum archives worldwide. If high-resolution scanning and simulated game theory can unlock the secrets of a scrap piece of stone in the Netherlands, it fundamentally expands our capacity to recover lost cultural practices across the globe.
It allows us to study the ancient world in a remarkably intimate way. We are no longer just looking at the architecture they built or the weapons they forged. We are interacting with the way they spent their leisure time.
That is the compelling human connection at the center of this research. It takes a sprawling, often abstract concept of the Roman Empire, which we typically view through the macro lens of emperors, conquests, and infrastructural engineering, and distills it down to a highly relatable, quiet human moment.
You can clearly visualize it.
You really can. Two friends at a bustling frontier settlement, leaning over a tavern table, sliding polished counters across a piece of imported stone, fully absorbed in outmaneuvering an imaginary hare.
They were testing each other's tactical foresight, likely arguing over the legality of a move, and engaging in the universal human pursuit of structured play. It proves that the psychological drive for competition and leisure has remained completely unchanged over 2 millennia.
It is a remarkable narrative arc. We began with a mysterious, misidentified artifact, languishing in a display case, and dismissed by some as a random architectural doodle.
And through the application of 3D topography, microscopic wear analysis, and millions of simulated tactical decisions driven by alpha-beta pruning, that stone has been restored to its original purpose.
Whether the grid is etched into a slab of Jurassic limestone or rendered on a modern digital screen, the mechanics of play endure.
It effectively bridges a massive blind spot in the archaeological record, demonstrating that ancient populations were experimenting with complex, asymmetric game theory centuries earlier than the historical consensus previously acknowledged.
As we conclude this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought to consider. The sources make a point to highlight a reality of the archaeological record. The primary reason Ludus Coriovalli survived long enough for an AI to reconstruct it is because an unknown resident of Coriovalum made the unusual decision to carve the grid into a highly durable piece of imported stone.
Which was incredibly rare. The vast majority of localized folk games from this era are completely invisible to us today because they were simply scratched into the dirt, drawn with chalk, or carved into wood that decomposed centuries ago.
The preservation of human culture often relies entirely on the durability of the medium rather than the popularity of the practice.
It's a sobering thought.
It is. So consider this. What if the absolute most popular game of the ancient world, the Roman equivalent of Monopoly, a game with mechanics so ubiquitous that virtually every citizen across the empire knew how to play it, is completely and permanently erased from human memory, simply because it was only ever played in the dirt?
We might never know.
It certainly makes you wonder what other massive cultural touchstones we are entirely missing. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.